Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. So, we have returned to the Fervisa medieval mystery novel series. This is mainly because I have decided to simplify my life. Once again, I've decided to simplify my life while I am reading the last 6 books in the collection of books that are part of my memorial for my mother, and instead of driving myself crazy during that time figuring out what I want to reread, I'm just going to do these. So, The Boy's Tale. First of all, in this book, we get a return of a character who was in the first book. This is something that happens, actually a return of a character who was in the first book, as well as who was in The Bishop's Tale. The thing about this series is that each book is its own thing, is its own separate story. You don't have to have read everything to pick up where we left off, but it does exist in a world, and it's a world that extends beyond the bounds of St. Friedeswede's right there and then. In the first book we're introduced to Fervisa's uncle, and by the end of The Bishop's Tale we have had the uncle's funeral. We have had that character have an effect, have a weight given to him, and then his death is given full weight for Fervisa, and even in this book she thinks to herself that she wishes Thomas were still there, that he were still available for her to talk to. In The Bishop's Tale, we are introduced to Fervisa's cousin, and her cousin, who appeared first in Bishop's Tale, has now returned. We are seeing her again in this book. Robert, who appeared in the first book, reappeared in The Bishop's Tale. We have the return of Marion, who was again in The Novice's Tale, has returned in this one. It's a bit of a what a small world we live in, but at the same time, people have networks of friends and family and acquaintances who, even if you don't go to them, even if their lives are far separate from yours, there's still an orbit, a way in which these things orbit each other, and they do come back around from time to time, sometimes, and you see these people again. And in a way, The Boy's Tale sort of reminds us all over again of that, of these continuing threads. Fervisa's cousin actually winds up becoming something of a significant player in this series, because her cousin has wound up, that her cousin is very, very well connected, is married to a duke, and so her coming back around, cousin Alice, coming back around periodically just connects us into the fact that Fervisa, for all that she wishes to be nothing more than a simple nun, is an intelligent, strong-willed woman who, when she is in places where things are happening, will look and see what is happening, will involve herself, she can't really help it because she's very smart and very self-willed, and if something is going on, she not only wants to understand it, but she wants to participate in order to make things better. It's one of the reasons why she attempts to solve mysteries in the first place, is because somebody has died and she believes firmly that, first of all, a murderer should be caught and prevented, if necessary, from doing it again, but also because truth should be known. It's one of the very, very significant things that comes up after the outlaw's tale, is how guilty she feels, how awful she feels because she has lied, because she has perpetuated lies. She has done it for the best of purposes. She has done it to protect a 15-year-old boy from being caught up in, something that could possibly lead to him being executed when he, all that had happened was he had flown into a rage out of fear for the safety of his aunt and had wound up killing somebody. But he has his whole life before him. He is repentant. He has confessed his sins. He's sorry he did it. And, he has learned from this mistake. And sending him to be executed will do no one any good. All it will do is, grieve his mother and, ruin the family. And so Fervisa allows that particular falsehood to be perpetuated, but ultimately she's a big believer in truth. Now in this book, Fervisa is once again caught up in hiding things, although luckily this time she doesn't so much have to lie as she has to studiously just not answer questions. And people keep on asking her, what's going on? Because we know something's going on. We're not dumb and you know what's going on. And she insists on saying, listen, if you don't know what's going on, then if somebody asks you what's going on, you can say you don't know. Once you know, you have to lie. And it's a very, very central thing. It's something that drives her character. We also of course get in this a return of a small thread of thought that had started in the Novice's Tale, which has to do with the Queen Mother. That is, the current king is a boy, and his mother has been basically separated from him. She's not allowed to see him anymore, and what she did was she basically ran off and eloped and said, you know what? I have given birth to a king. I'm not allowed to see my son anymore. Screw everything. I'm going to get married to somebody I want to be married to. None of that matters, except, of course, a still relatively young woman's hand, a woman who is the mother of a king, who can be bartered off in marriage for all kinds of connections and treaties and whatnot, is not something to be allowed to run off and get married to some random Welshman that she just thinks is awesome. It's that old saw, what has love to do with marriage, and that is very, very heavily emphasized. And at the start of this book, she and her husband have become aware that somebody has also become aware that she has 3 children by this man that she was not supposed to marry, and so on and so forth. And the problem is, of course, that she is the Queen Mother. It makes her children at least partially eligible for the throne, and there's a lot of concern that people have about this kind of thing. So she sends her children away, trying to save them, with the intention of she and her husband catching up with them in Wales and, living in exile in Wales, which, after all, it's Wales. It's the middle of nowhere. Within the context of the British Isles, especially in this period. Except they get waylaid on the way and just barely make it to St. Friedesweeds. And the remnants of their small party, which is 2 boys, Marion, who is kind of the person in charge by virtue of being the Queen's highest ranked lady in waiting, has directed them there because they can at least take sanctuary in a church, because if you are in a church, they can't drag you out, not legally. If you've ever watched Hunchback of Notre Dame, there's that scene where Phoebus lies and says she's asked for sanctuary, and the idea of sanctuary is once you're inside the church, you have asked God for safety, and so you're going to be safe because you have applied to God, in effect, to keep you safe, and it is not done. It's basically illegal to drag anybody out of there. So So they're effectively asking for sanctuary, except that they can't say we're on the run protecting the Queen's sort of semi-legitimate to the throne. I mean, they're totally legitimate in terms of the Queen has married her husband. They're legitimate heirs to whatever the husband has. But, there's questions about legitimacy to the throne and so on and so forth. And you can't actually say that because the whole point is that you're supposed to be hiding, so they have to say we were just traveling and got set on by brigands. And the whole thing gets really, really complicated and really, really ugly by the end. Fervisa is startled to have her cousin Alice show up, but also doubly startled when cousin Alice is all like, oh yeah, I totally showed your letter to the bishop, and Fervisa's just like, no, I was trying to get a look in on what was happening. I did not want you to come in here and take the kids and basically threaten everybody. She likes her cousin, but there's sort of this thing that puts them at odds because her cousin has become a very, very political creature, and Fervisa is one but doesn't want to be. And that comes out in spades in later books. So there's that. But the last thing that has repercussions further along in the series is that the prioress of St. Friedesweeds has been dying, and she's been dying for a couple of books now. But Domina Edith has died. She dies at the very end of this book. She's basically unconscious, and in every breath might be her last sort of sleep during the basically second half of this book. But the final basically couple paragraphs of this book, that she hears the cloister bells start to toll the slow count of years that marked a death, a stroke for every year someone had lived. And she realizes it's not Sir Gawain who is not yet dead. It's for Domina Elizabeth. Requiem aeternam dona eis, Domine. The words came to her from the office of the dead without bidding. Et lux perpetua luceat eis. Eternal rest give to them, Lord, and in perpetual light shine on them. In pace, Domina, libera. In peace, my lady, go free. She spent the entire book praying, trying to push herself to pray for the prioress, her prioress who she loves very, very deeply, who has been a guiding hand at St. Friedesweeds for all the way back, for, years upon years upon years. And Fervisa has spent, in between trying to solve a mystery, in between trying to work around the limitations placed on a nun, in between trying to figure out what was happening and to keep these two boys safe from somebody who was clearly out to kill them. And all of this, she has spent the whole parts of this book trying to pray not for Domina Edith to live, but for her passing to be peaceful, for her to go to her final rest peacefully and calmly and all of that. And so the most important thing to her personally in this book is the last sentence of this book, just a farewell and a wish for this woman who she loves so dearly in a purely platonic kind of, like a mother sort of way, to go to die peacefully and in her sleep, and it's very touching, and ooh, I'm out of time. So I guess that's everything, and I will see you all next week.